Hello everyone. Today's video is about the Atmakaraka through the signs in the Navamsa, and this is also called the swamsa or the swa. This is Jaimini Astrology, and it's very important in determining a lot about the individual through their Atmakaraka in the Navamsa. The Navamsa is the most important Varga or divisional chart in this method, and you can also use it for other karakas like your Dara Karaka, which represents your spouse, or your Matra Karaka, which represents your mother, things like that. But I'm going to talk about the Atmakaraka through the signs, and for this you look in the Navamsa. Okay. Now some swamsas or some of these signs are more complicated than others. Some are very simple and easy to understand and don't really pose as many challenges. And other swamsas have more to do with health and have metaphorical animals that mean certain psychological things and can manifest as real animals as well. So if you have a complicated swamsa, then don't become alarmed or anything like that. It's just it's something that's a part of you, a part of your personality, where in other places in the chart you could have things that are very simple and easy. And if you have a very simple swamsa, I have a simple swamsa, just very like Jaimini will only give one or two words about it. That's also just one aspect of the chart and one aspect of the Atmakaraka, which represents the self. And you can have more complicated, more challenging areas in other places in the horoscope. So, okay, so to get started, now whatever your Atmakaraka is, that is the planet in the highest degrees of a sign in the Rasi, not in the Navamsa, in the Rasi, and the Rasi is the birth chart. So you take that planet in the highest degrees of a sign, that is your Atmakaraka, and I am using the Tropical Zodiac in this. And you see its placement, what sign placement it occupies in the Navamsa. Okay? So now, if your Atmakaraka occupies Aries in the Navamsa, which would be an Aries swamsa or swa for short, Jaimini says 5 rats and cats. That's all he says. 5 rats and cats. Okay? So you really have to just kind of think about what that sutra means. And it just means the characteristics and the knowledge gained from rats and cats. 5 in Vedic numerology is the number of knowledge, of gaining knowledge from material creation. And number 5 is the number of Jupiter. Okay, so in Jupiter is higher knowledge, wisdom, and that sort of thing. Okay, so you're getting higher knowledge and wisdom from rats and cats. So what does that mean exactly? Well, rats are foragers, and forager means someone who is searching for something, and rats usually forage through refuse and things that have already been harvested, like barrels of grain or that type of thing, or they forage through carcasses. So they're foraging through things that are somebody doesn't want or has already been discarded or is dying. And that is very telling because Aries is the first day of spring, and Aries is everything is growing, everything is being birthed, everything is coming up out of the earth, and everything is new, but it is being built on what had already passed away in the previous cycle, in the fall and winter. Okay, so someone who has their Atmakaraka in Aries is looking to do something new from what has already been discarded. Okay, something new, and create something that they see as innovative and ingenious. Okay, and pioneering. That's what an Aries does, and that's very similar to all of the descriptions of Aries that we know about, not just in Parasha Parashara, but also in Western astrology. And then now rats and cats and rats have this in common, is they can see very well at night. Rats are nocturnal animals, and cats, of course, are always up during the night. They sleep during the day most of the time. Sometimes they're up during the day, but they also see very well at night. So they see what others really cannot see, okay? And that is, the Aries sees opportunities and things that most people would completely ignore or disregard. Okay, so that makes them also very innovative, ingenious, and pioneering. All the attributes, the common attributes of Aries. Now, another thing about cats is they're constantly cleaning themselves, and cats are getting rid of what doesn't belong. That's what really cleaning is. And so that's another thing an Aries does. They discard, or they discard things that don't belong and that are distractions, and they are very one-pointed and focused, okay? And so that is actually, the Atmakaraka will represent where we have challenges, but also things that we are good at. It's places in our life where we focus on. So an Aries is very focused on all of those attributes that I just said, and also he or she is very focused on what they want to do, and it's usually something new. Okay. So yeah, that's the Aries, the AK in Aries as Aries, or Aries as the swamsa. Okay. AK, Atmakaraka and Aries in the Navamsa. And, they transform, the rat transforms refuse into something useful and productive for himself, his family, and others, right? Okay, so that's what an Aries does, and that's kind of his challenge in life, his or her challenge. All right, now's another pretty simple one. All right, the next one is Taurus, and Jaimini says, in that place, Taurus, a quadruped. That's it. That's all he says, a quadruped. That's what Taurus means. Quadrupeds are symbols of wealth, comfort, and having our needs met. Comfort in that we can ride them. In the old days, if we had a donkey or a horse, whatever it is, they could help us travel in comfort. And also they were symbols of wealth. A cow especially was a big symbol of wealth, which is the animal of Taurus, or a bull. And from animals we can get, from goats, from cows, quadrupeds, we can have our needs met in the form of food, through their milk, cheese, and even their flesh. So Taurus is kind of a simple one. The Taurus person wants to have their needs met, and they tend to focus on security. That is a challenge for them because they're focused on it. Okay, and building wealth, building a foundation. But it's not really, they don't have to build a lot of money or be a millionaire, although a lot of them do end up having that happen to them. But they just having their needs met and being comfortable and having a very aesthetic, or having aesthetic surroundings. Their environment needs to be comforting or comfortable. And that's kind of the challenge of a Taurus. They don't want to starve or do things that is going to disrupt having their needs met. Okay, so that's what that means. Now, Gemini. Gemini is one of the more challenging signs, believe it or not. Okay. Jaimini says, in Gemini, itches and stoutness, density. And that's, between stoutness and density is a slash, or even a comma, I guess you could put there. So he's a man of very few words. He really wants you to think about it yourself. To think about the sutras yourself and contemplate them. And so itches. Now, the Atmakaraka in the Gemini Navamsa, or in the Gemini Swa, can give skin issues. It can give them, okay? It doesn't do that all the time, but it can give them. Also, the Atmakaraka and Gemini in the swa, or in the Navamsa, can make a person overweight, or can make them very wiry, muscular, skinny, okay? It gives weight fluctuations. It can give a lot of dense muscle, which is density, or it can give overweight problems. And a lot of times the person will fluctuate between the two during their lifetime, but not always, okay? So those are some of the health problems, or the health issues, I shouldn't say problems, that Gemini, the Atmakaraka and Gemini can give. An example of this is Michael Jackson. He was extremely thin guy, and also apparently had some skin problems, okay? Now, metaphorically, what this means is a Gemini is an air sign, and they have a lot of mental concepts and ideas, and they're very curious. It's known for its curiosity and its willingness to communicate, and its willingness to experiment with ideas and concepts. Now, if they get too attached to their ideas and concepts and don't allow new things to come in, then those things can manifest in these health problems, okay? Or if they're open to too much information, Geminis tend to take in a lot of that information around them, and they don't know where to go. They're very confused about which ideas and concepts to go with or follow along. That also can give them some problems, some skin problems, and weight issues. Okay, so that's what Jaimini, or what that you can interpret that as itches and stoutness density. Okay, so very mental people and a little more complicated. All right, in Cancer, this is also a challenging one. Okay, in Cancer, Jaimini says, at a distant place, comma, water frigidity, comma, leprosy, etc. Okay, at a distant place. Now, this is a little counterintuitive because we think of Cancer as the fourth sign in the house of the home. And so we would think that Cancer would be the house of one's own country or one's own place. And actually, that's not the case. At a distant place is a foreign country. And Jaimini says that the sign of Cancer is the sign of foreign countries. And usually when the AK or the Atmakaraka is in Cancer in the Navamsa, the person will live in a foreign country at a certain point in their life. Or they will live at a far distant place from their birthplace. So, you know, if you were born in Florida and you end up living in Colorado or Washington, that's also at a distant place. But usually it means foreign, okay? Cancer can mean foreigners. It gives those effects, the AK in Cancer, in the Navamsa. Now, water frigidity. Cancer is a water sign. It's also a Brahman sign. It's a Brahmanic sign. So the AK in Cancer can give a lot of interest in spiritual matters, a very high-minded person, interested in spirituality, and but also they can be overly attached, overly emotional. They tend to develop attachments very easily and are tenacious with those attachments, but if they're too tenacious with them, they will develop water-based or emotional-based diseases, or water retention, swelling of the joints, that type of thing. That also can be a part of Cancer. Those two sides of that coin for the Atmakaraka in Cancer. Okay, then he says leprosy. Now, this has also to do with leprosy. It, you know, pretty much, it still exists, believe it or not. in India, it still exists. In Egypt, it still exists. Some places in Africa, people still get leprosy. But in the West, it's been pretty much wiped out, but not completely. Okay. In the old ancient times, it was much more prevalent. Now, leprosy would condemn a person to a life of isolation and stigmatization, because they would be away from people. They could not they could not participate in society. They had to be away because it was a contagious disease. And so that usually meant isolation. Now, when this has to do with the Cancer and their emotional nature and their expectations and attachments, when they can feel when they go too far in those attachments, that and they are rebuffed, or their expectations are not met emotionally, they feel like a leper, or they can feel isolated. And so that's a challenge for the Atmakaraka in Cancer, in the Navamsa, is to kind of regulate their emotionality so they don't feel so isolated, and neediness can also be a problem. And these challenges are get worse if the person has an afflicted Atmakaraka in Cancer, or they can get better and they don't have a problem with this isolation if their Atmakaraka has good aspects to it and it's well disposed. So that's kind of the challenge of the Atmakaraka in Cancer, or one of the challenges. Okay. And now, if they don't live in a foreign place, they can also idolize a foreign culture. And that can also contribute to the isolation feeling. So that is the Atmakaraka in Cancer. Okay. Now, and living far away from their families and relatives, that sort of thing. And they really need to learn how to regulate their deep-seated emotions and attachments. Whereas the previous sign, Gemini, they had Gemini is more mental. They're attached to their mental concepts, but with Cancer, they're more attached to their emotional needs and wants and that type of thing. And so that's Atmakaraka in Cancer. Now, Atmakaraka in Leo. He says, remaining beasts of prey, remaining in one's own place. Leo is the king of the jungle. He's the lion, he's the king of the jungle, and he wants to lord over his own territory. That's the challenge of Leo. Atmakaraka in Leo is usually someone who succeeds very well in life at whatever they do. Whatever they do, they usually do very well. And they become the king, basically, of what they do. But they don't like to venture out into different territory and explore new things. They're not really as curious about new things as a Gemini, an AK in Gemini would be. And so they are really an expert in their own field, and they like to stay in that field. And usually that happens wherever they grow up and live. They don't like to go to foreign countries and live in foreign countries, or they don't like to go to far away places. They like either to stay in their home state or their hometown, lord over it, because they've grown up there, they've established a foundation there. It's also a fixed sign, okay? And so usually people with Atmakaraka and Leo, like I said, they do very well in their chosen field and excel at it, okay? Now, the challenge of Atmakaraka and Leo is leadership. Because they usually excel at what they do, they become a leader in what they do, and they have to learn how to be a good leader. And when it says remaining beasts of prey, that means they're going to have challenges to their leadership by other people who are also very good. Beasts of prey, which is basically other lions. And, you know, what do lions do? They fight over, you know, the harem of female lions. So they are going to have challenges to their leadership if they do a poor job. And their kind of their purpose, or one of their purposes, is to know how to be a good leader. That's the Atmakaraka in Leo. Okay? Now, Atmakaraka in Virgo. Here's another kind of complicated one. Okay? He says, like Gemini, as well as small fire. Okay? So the effects for the Atmakaraka in Virgo are exactly the same as Gemini. So go back to what I said about Gemini and listen to that. That's Atmakaraka in Virgo. But in addition to that, Virgo has a small fire, which means the digestive fire. And the digestive fire is integrating the food that we eat into something we can use, the energy we can use, and also building the cells in our body. This is metaphorical for integrating new experiences, emotions, mental concepts, that type of thing. Now, Virgo as an earth sign ruled by Mercury, it's the place where Mercury is exalted. Mercury is the manager, and these people want to manage experiences to satisfy their desires or their goals or whatever that is. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. You could say controlling, you know, Virgo in Western astrology, Virgo and Scorpio have the reputation of being controlling. Now, and that's not, you know, too far-fetched according to Jaimini, because they very much want to manage their lives in the best way they know how. And when the experiences that they meet with don't conform to what they think it should be, they can become very mentally and emotionally agitated. And this is the small fire. This is how this manifests. They don't take the experiences, integrate them into something that is worthwhile to them, emotionally or mentally, okay? And also physically. This can show up physically in digestive problems. And now, also, like as in Gemini, the person with an Atmakaraka in Virgo can have some skin issues, like eczema or what is it called? I forgot the name of it. Or, you know, acne, bad acne, you know, whatever it is, dry, itchy skin, that type of thing. So if you have Atmakaraka in Virgo in the Navamsa, please go back and listen to what I said about Gemini. Okay? Now, the next one. This is super easy. This is an easy one. Kind of a boring one, but don't worry, it's not, you know, that doesn't mean your chart is boring. It just means, you know, it's just a simple one. This is AK in Libra, and all Jaimini says about this is trade. One word, trade. And that makes sense. You know, Libra is the sign of the scales, and you know, the merchants weighing things and selling his wares. Now, the native who has their SWA in Libra will enjoy acquiring those things that they think are valuable. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they are involved in any kind of financial profession or a merchant or anything like that. They can be, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that they're trying, this lifetime is a lifetime of discerning what is valuable to them and having the means, acquiring the means, or getting the means to acquire what they want and what they think is valuable. It's very much like a Taurus, which is also ruled by Venus, okay, which is the planet of trade. Venus is the planet of trade because relationships are basically trading. It's two people trading things, sharing things, experiences, love, emotion, sex, whatever it is. That is both of those signs ruled by Venus are centered around getting your needs met, getting what you want based on what you think is valuable. Okay, very similar. Okay, so yeah, that's the Atmakaraka in Libra, and it's making money. Because money is really what we use for trade in the modern world, and so making money usually comes up, not always, but usually comes up as an important part of an AK or Atmakaraka in Libra. It comes up as an important facet of their life. So yeah, that's Atmakaraka in Libra. Okay, so Atmakaraka in Scorpio. This is a more challenging, complicated one. Okay, it's not the most complicated, but one of the most. The more complicated ones are Gemini, Virgo, Scorpio, and Capricorn. Of those four, Capricorn, in my opinion, is the most complicated, followed by Scorpio, followed by Virgo, and then Gemini. Okay? So here we're on the third most complicated, in my view. So Scorpio. Atmakaraka in Scorpio. This is what Jaimini says. Now, this is the Atmakaraka in the Navamsa, in the sign of Scorpio. Okay? He says, demons, water serpents, Vishnu, and deprivation of that contained in the breast. Now, so Atmakaraka and Scorpio, demons represent, or they're emotional and psychological demons that Scorpios must deal with throughout their lives and what they're trying to transform in their inner being, in their emotional body. That is what the demons represent, okay, for a Scorpio. Now, water serpents are emotional disappointments, but now that is on a metaphorical level. However, it can manifest, because everything can manifest from our emotional body. It can manifest into our physical reality as trouble from aquatic animals like water moccasins, water snakes, crocodiles, alligators, anything that will trouble them in the water while they're in the water, because the water represents our emotional consciousness, our subconscious, but also our emotion. And when we're having trouble inwardly and can't wrestle with these demons, it can show up outwardly in our physical reality. Okay, because everything is connected. And now when he talks about Vishnu, right, he puts water serpents and then there's a slash and then Vishnu. Vishnu will manifest when the Scorpio transforms his emotional challenges into a Zen type of realization. Now, this is what we call the awakened Scorpio. The whole idea of the sign of Scorpio, which corresponds to the 8th house, is transformation. And a Scorpio has to transform, or their challenge in life is to transform their negative, disappointing experiences into a kind of realization, a spiritual realization, which is Vishnu, because Vishnu is all of creation. Vishnu is manifest creation. And he's everything. So it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter if this happens or that happens. It's really all the same, right? It doesn't matter if you have a terrible childhood or a good childhood, because these experiences are Vishnu. They're all the same thing happening. Everything that happens is really a part of God anyway. So it's kind of the challenge for the Scorpio, the Atmakaraka and Scorpio person, to see that everything is God, which is basically the Vishnu or Vaishnava way of looking at the world, or their worship, their type of worship. Now, the Vaishnavas see Krishna everywhere. And also it's a kind of a Zen type of worship where everything is a part of God and it's just, basically atoms. Or emotions. Emotions are energy. It doesn't matter if it's anger or if it's love. It's an energy that we transform into whatever we want. And that's kind of the Scorpio way of experiencing life. Another thing it says about Scorpio is deprivation of that contained in the breast. Usually a person who has Atmakaraka and Scorpio in their early childhood in some form was deprived of some kind of emotional needs. Their emotional needs were not met when they were in early childhood. That can be a part of an Atmakaraka in Scorpio life. Okay. So they also go on to transform these experiences, and that's what gives birth to these demons, these emotional demons. More than any other sign, Scorpio has the power to transform the negative into the positive, into something good for themselves and for others. Okay? So that's the Atmakaraka in Scorpio. Now, this just reminded me of something because I meant to say this at the beginning, but I didn't. Forgot. But you can also look at the Atmakaraka in the Rasi, or in the birth chart. That is not as important as the Atmakaraka in the Navamsa, but it will give some tendencies. Like, say if you have, let's say if you have Atmakaraka in Aries in the Rasi, or in the birth chart, and then you have Atmakaraka in Scorpio in the Navamsa, you will manifest some Atma and Karaka, or Atmakaraka in Aries qualities, as well as Atmakaraka and Scorpio qualities. You will, but not as much. Okay? So I just wanted to throw that out there. I should have said that at the beginning, but I forgot. Alright, Atmakaraka and Sagittarius. This is more of a simple one. Okay, not as simple as Atmakaraka in Libra, but it's pretty simple. He says, while proceeding, a fall from a vehicle and a height. Okay. Sagittarius is a sign of goal meeting, or realizing our goals, or making goals and trying to meet them. He's the sign of the archer. And the archer is all about meeting that goal. It can see a big picture. And, or it can see its goal and it really wants to meet it, so it fires that shot. Okay, that's a Sagittarius, and ruled by Jupiter. It's a very philosophical sign. Now, because if the goals are too high, the person can fall from a height, meaning they either go through a period in their life where they didn't meet their goal and they fell from a height, meaning they lost their prestige or their standing in society. They lost their standing in their career, or among their family members, or among their friends. Something happened where they're brought back down to reality. Okay? That's usually how it manifests. Sometimes it can actually manifest as a person falling, falling off a roof or something, or they can fall from a vehicle, meaning they can have an accident in some type of vehicle, either a car, a bike, a boat, an airplane, whatever it is. The person can suffer that. Not always. There's other things in the chart that have to point in that direction. But the Sagittarius person aims high, usually. And when they aim too high, that they reach beyond their means, or reach beyond what their karmas are going to give them. So they're brought back down to earth. Okay? So look for that for Atmakaraka in Sagittarius. Okay, Capricorn. All right, this is a very complicated one. He says, aquatic animals, things moving in the air, / planets, / birds, / demons. Villages, kapha, or / kapha. Itches, defects, guilt, and tumors / joints in Capricorn. Okay, that's a lot. I have to take a drink before I tackle this one. All right, so aquatic animals, basically the same thing as Scorpio. Capricorn and Scorpio are very similar when they have the Atmakaraka in that sign. You know, Capricorn is the feminine sign of Saturn, and Scorpio is the feminine sign of Mars, the two malefics. Okay, so a lot of that negative or challenging energy that these two planets present, because they do present challenges, is directed inward because of their feminine signs. Okay. Now, things moving in the air, planets, birds, demons. Those are all things moving in the air. In addition to having emotional disturbances that a Capricorn may have, another aspect of having the Atmakaraka in Capricorn, the Navamsa, the person can have a difficult childhood. They can. It doesn't have to do so much with the mother, which is more centered in Scorpio, or the primary caregiver, but just generally speaking, their childhood tends to be unfulfilling, or, you know, didn't meet their needs somehow, or they weren't as happy as the other children. Okay. That's an aspect of Atmakaraka and Capricorn. Now, another thing that bothers the Capricorn is their mental concepts, believe it or not, like a Gemini, like Atmakaraka and Gemini. Their mental concepts about how things should be. And because Capricorn is the 10th sign, and it's very much a sign of work and climbing the corporate ladder and getting ahead and, you know, doing what you're supposed to do. And a lot of times Capricorns will believe that they deserve a certain outcome. That outcome doesn't happen. And that is very devastating to them, and more devastating than it would be to other signs. But they can be very attached to the fruits of their labor. You know, like a lot of us are, most of us are, but they are to a further degree. And also their mental concepts about how things should be. Air moving in air. Air is the sign of mental concepts, of ideas. Okay. Not the sign, I'm sorry, the element. It's the element of that. That's what generates our ideas and our thoughts. Now, villages, kapha. It's villages / kapha. Another thing is, you know, like I said, the Capricorn is, you know, very attached to their work, and they tend to, if they work with people, their peers are very important to them, their environment, their friends, they can have some expectations of these people that are not met. So they need to let go of those expectations of these people. That is a challenge of Atmakaraka and Capricorn. Now, kapha is an Ayurvedic dosha. And it's a combination of the water element and the earth element. And it makes things slow, dull, prone to water retention, just like Cancer. Okay? And that can also make it difficult for the person to let go of attachments and expectations, and also any trauma they have suffered from their childhood or their friends or peers in the village. Okay? That's what that means metaphorically. Now, in physically, that can mean some problems with water retention and excessive kapha dosha. You know, which can give coldness, frigidity, like he mentioned in Cancer, and joint problems. And also Cancer, according to Jaimini, Capricorn gives tumors. Capricorn is the sign of Cancer, the disease Cancer, not the sign Cancer, because he gives tumors. And when you see afflicted planets in Capricorn in the trim swamsa, that's the Varga, or the divisional chart of health. The person can be prone to getting tumors. Okay, those are afflicted planets in that 30th divisional chart, the chart of health, the trim swamsa. So you have to be careful of that. Now, and watch out for that. If you see something like that, if you have a client that has something like that, please, make sure you mention that to somebody. So that's Capricorn is that sign. It can do that. It's not the only thing that does that, but Jaimini specifically says Capricorn can give tumors. Personally, I've seen it work very well, in my practice, but, so that's what he says about that. But Capricorn is a very challenging sign. I mean, because it's the feminine sign of Saturn, which is, probably is the malefic. And Saturn is slow and dull, but he is very persevering. When the Atmakaraka is in Saturn or in Capricorn and it's well disposed, the person will persevere through anything. You can throw anything at them and they will get through it because they have gotten through all these things, aquatic animals, which is basically emotional disturbances, and they've gotten through mental disturbances, which are birds and planets and demons. And they've gotten through disapproval from peers. They've gone through these things early on, and usually they can take anything. Another thing I want to mention about Capricorn, and this isn't only about Capricorn, it's also Aquarius and Pisces. Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, these are the last three signs, okay? These three signs do not have the spine, the body parts of the spine. Every other sign has the spine. And so these three signs are very faded, more faded. Or the person believes they want to do something, and a lot of the times they get a completely different result of what they're thinking. Or kind of like Kalasarpa Yoga, which I was talking about in my last video. But they don't have a spine. The Capricorn rules the thighs. It rules the top of the knee joint, the top of the knee joint and the thigh. Aquarius rules the bottom of the knee joint and the calf, or the shank, and to the ankle. And Pisces rules the feet. They don't have the spine. Every other sign has a spine. So a lot of what they do is basically finishing up their karmas. Okay? So because Capricorn also is the 10th sign and corresponds to the 10th house, which is the house of karma, believe it or not, or the house of action, they take a lot of action in the world. But if they are attached to the results or the fruits of their labor, they usually get disappointed. So yeah, that's the Atmakaraka in Capricorn. One of the most complicated, challenging signs to have the Atmakaraka in. Okay. Now, Aquarius. Maker of ponds, tanks, things related to shores in Aquarius. Okay. Aquarius is the sign of islands. People living on islands, if you live on an island, it's possible you have your Atmakaraka in Aquarius. Or if your Atmakaraka is in Aquarius, it's possible you will live on an island at some point. Or you will live on a shore, a lake shore, a river bank, or the ocean shore. Or you can be involved in, your profession is involved in water somehow. That you, you deal in swimming pools or hot tubs, or you can work on a boat or an oil rig. One of the oil rigs out in the ocean. And metaphorically, this just means that the Aquarius can hold their emotions very well. They're not an emotional sign. They kind of compartmentalize that part of themselves because Aquarius is an air sign, a very intellectual air sign. So they live right on the surface, or right where it begins, where the water hits the land. And they keep it away. They live on an island and the ocean surrounds them, but they aren't concerned with it. They keep it at bay. It's under control. The water is under control. Their emotions, their subconscious, it's under control, or they attempt to keep it under control, and they think they have it under control. A very controlled, mentally astute sign. Okay, emotionally controlled, mentally astute sign. Pretty simple. And if you see a lot of factors, a lot of home factors, like the fourth lord, or I'm just throwing this in there. This doesn't have to do with the Atmakaraka, but you can work with this. You can see Mars. Mars is our home, real estate, things like that. All in Aquarius, with a heavy Aquarius influence in the fourth chapter Chamsha of Varga, then it could be possible the person lives on an island, or they live on the beach, or on a shore of some type of shore. So that's something to keep in mind with Aquarius. Now, Pisces. In Pisces, elevation, perpetual dharma, and kaivalyam. Kaivalyam means liberation, or it means liberation, but it also means complete individualization and liberation at the same time. So Pisces, when you have Atmakaraka and Pisces, Jaimini really likes this one. Pisces is like the other two water signs, Scorpio and Cancer, is a Brahman sign. So the person can have a very spiritual nation bent on liberation, even more so than the other two. They can be very high-minded and interested in bettering themselves spiritually. Very interested in that. However, usually they go through a period in their life where they have escapist tendencies. This is when the Atmakaraka is afflicted. It can give escapist tendencies, and the person can have addictions to escape, like alcohol, drugs, porn, sex addiction, video games. They just don't want to deal. They want to get away from life. They want to get away from mundane cares of the world, and they want to escape that and just get away from that. And eventually, they do this. Now, I think, I could be wrong. I can't remember his chart. But I think Russell Brand has Atmakaraka and Pisces, and he was, a comedian. I could be wrong. I really can't remember. For some reason, he popped in my head. But, that he was, a total drug and sex addict in his early career, and then he, completely changed his life and turned himself around. If his AK isn't in Pisces, then it's due to something else. But that's usually what happens with an Atmakaraka and Pisces person. They are very concerned about bettering themselves spiritually. Okay, and if it's afflicted, then usually that will start out as having escapist tendencies. And, you know, they can escape into intellectuality or, you know, video games or just social isolation, pretty much. Okay. So that concludes it. I know this has been a long one. I went through everything. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comment section. And yeah, and you can also do this with other karakas, with other charakarakas. Charakarakas mean changing karakas. Charakarakas are unique to the individual. Okay, so it's different for everybody. You know, you can have Saturn as your Atmakaraka, and you can have Mars as your Dharaka Karaka. And the person next to you can have the Sun as the Atmakaraka and Venus as their Dharakaraka. But, so like if you want to look at your spouse, what your spouse is like, look at the Dharakaraka, the sign of the Dharakaraka in the Navamsa. If you want to know what your brothers are like, or your sisters, or your siblings, look for the Bhatru Karaka, which is the third, number 3, the third highest in degrees in a sign. Look at that in the Navamsa. You know, that's how it works. So, yeah, I think I've covered everything. Yeah, so this is really important, you know, to get kind of a general picture of somebody besides all of the other things you have to add up. So yeah, I think I've covered everything. Okay, so next video will be about some success producing yogas in Jaimini, and Argala, which is also gives success in Jaimini. So that's all for today, and thanks for watching. Bye.